This is question number 18 on the November 2013 higher non-calculator paper. Straight away, as soon as you glance at this question, you should realize that it is a cumulative frequency question. Looking at the question, it says the cumulative frequency graph shows information about the times 80 swimmers take to swim 50 meters. So it's a cumulative frequency graph. I could tell that, but that's important. And the number of swimmers is important, but I could actually see that on the graph as well. It goes all the way up to 80, not the highest point there, but there it goes up to 80. So there are 80 swimmers. I could tell that from the graph. Let's look at what part A is asking us to do. I want to try to see as much of this graph as possible so that as I work through, I know what I need to do. So in part A, it says use the graph to find an estimate for the median. So a key thing there is working out the median time. Now, the median is the halfway value, the middle value, when all the values are put in order. In a cumulative frequency graph, lucky for us, they're already in order. And I know in this particular cumulative frequency graph, the values go up to 80. So half of 80 is 40. I need to go along from 40 and then back down to the x-axis and pick up that value. So if I keep it at that level, we can see exactly what I need to do. Right, there are 80 swimmers altogether. Half of 80 is 40. You need to be really accurate. Draw a horizontal line across, and then if you look carefully at the graph, there is a vertical line that you come downwards, and you need to use exactly that. A lot of people do not pay attention to detail and they draw a wonky line, right? And as a result, you will not get the full marks. That is my median, and I need to read off that value. Now, a lot of people look at that, and before they read the scale properly, they write down a number. But what you need to recognize is this is 60, this is 80. So at this point here, that's 70. So every one of those tiny squares between 60 and 70, they stand for 2. So it's going to be 62, 64, 66, 68. So in my answer space, I'm going to write down 68. And having looked at the mark scheme for this, the mark scheme wants exactly this answer. There isn't a range of answers. They want exactly 68. So this is where you need to be very, very careful and very, very precise to make sure that you actually give the accurate answer. Part B is on the next page. Let's have a look at this next. Okay, this is part B. And in part B, as we read the question, it says a swimmer has to swim 50 meters, which is the distance that they needed to, they all swam, all 80 of them, in 60 seconds or less to qualify for the swim team. The team captain says more than 25% of swimmers have qualified for the swim team. Is the captain right? At this point, I've just noticed the star next to this question, so I need to write a sentence. And again, from the question, is the captain right? You could see that, and they said you must show how you got the answer. You must show how you got the answer. So each stage of this, you need to be clear about showing how you got the answer. Now, this is usually the last part of a question, and it's not written in this way, but they often give you something where you have to read off the cumulative frequency graph. And here they say a swimmer has to swim 50 meters in 60 seconds or less to qualify for the swim team. Now let's go to the cumulative frequency graph and see what reading 60 seconds or less gives us. So looking at the cumulative frequency graph, and remember they said you must show how you got your answer. So I need to show this on the cumulative frequency graph. If I go to 60 seconds and I take that reading, I want them to see that I've actually done that. So I'm going to mark in along the cumulative frequency graph 60 seconds. I need to find out how many swimmers swam 60 seconds or less. So going across to here, I need to take that reading. Okay, that reading, every tiny square stands for 1, so that reading is going to be 28. What this tells me is 28 swimmers took 60 seconds or less. So it's this bit here, 60 seconds or less. 28 swimmers took 60 seconds or less. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my question and see how that could help me work out my answer. So I'll write that down as well. From the graph, 28 swimmers took 60 seconds or less. Now, there are 80 swimmers, and 25% of 80, and 25% means a quarter of 80, half it and half it again is 20. And if you think about it, from what the swim captain says, more than 25% of swimmers qualified for the swim team. 25% of the swimmers is 20 swimmers, so you could read that as saying more than 20 swimmers qualified for the swim team. Actually, that's correct, because according to this, 28 of the swimmers took less than 60 seconds and they would have qualified for the swim team. So because 28 is more than 20, he is right. Okay, is the swim captain right? Yep, he is right. So I've shown my working. The examiner could see how I've actually taken my readings from the graph, and everything necessary is there. Let's go on to part C and complete that part. This is part C, and it says for these 80 swimmers, the least time taken, so the least time taken was 28 seconds. The greatest time taken was 96 seconds. Use the cumulative frequency graph and the information above to draw a box plot. So they want us to draw a box plot for time taken by the swimmers. Okay, so what I am going to do is I'm going to, first of all, in an exam, I would actually just do a quick sketch of a box plot and remind myself what I need to do. Put in the median. Okay, so that's the lowest, that's the highest value. That's the lower quartile, and that's the upper quartile. And in the middle, it's the median. Now, we've actually worked out a certain bit of this already, and we have it. So the lowest value is 28. The highest value is 96. The median we worked out in part A, and I could see across there my answer to part A was 68. The lower quartile and the upper quartile, I don't know what they are, but I need to find those values now. So I'm going to go back to my original cumulative frequency graph given to me in part A and work out the lower quartile and the upper quartile. One of the things you need to be aware of is because the values go all the way up to 80, quartiles means splitting it into quarters. So the lower quartile is the first quarter. So I'm going to go all the way down here, and a quarter of 80 is 20. Yep, so that's 1/4 of 80 is 20, and then I'll go across and then down. So all the way across. And it seems to fall halfway between two values. Oh, sorry, two of the lines between the grid. I'll try to be as accurate as possible. And let's read this off. So if that's 40, that there is going to be 50. And I'll say just one square up. So that I'll call 52. So the upper quartile, we'll call it 52. Actually, because it's halfway between these two cells, I'm going to go with 53. I try to be as accurate as possible, because in part A, the answer was a spot-on answer, and they wanted an exact value. So I'm going to go for a lower quartile of 53, because it's halfway between these two grid values. Going on to working out the upper quartile. The upper quartile is a quarter of the way down. Now we worked out that the lower quartile was going across from 20, so if I come 20 down, that takes me to 60, and I'm going to do the same again there. So I'm going to use that to help me work out my upper quartile and be as accurate as possible. Go across and then down. And I'm going to need to read off that value at the bottom. Okay, reading off that value there, I've indicated that there, but that was 70, so 72, 74, 76. So I have an upper quartile of 70. If I go back to here, I indicate that the upper quartile I have was 76 and the lower quartile was 53. And these now need to be put onto the grid. I'm going to start off by drawing 5 vertical lines. And the first one is going to be at 28. Remember, you're using the same scale as before, so that's 30. And so 28 is going to be 1 square in front of that, and I'm going to draw that line there. If I go to the top end, 96, this is 100, 98, 96. The median is at 68, so that's 60, that's 70, 68 will be 1 square ahead of that. Then the lower quartile is at 53, so 40, 50, 52, and then 53, just as before. I'm going to put it halfway between those two cells in that grid. And finally, the upper quartile is going to be at 76. So that's 60, 70, 80, work backwards, 78, 76. And so now, complete the box is off in the center. And put your lines in about halfway. And there you have it. There's your box plot. The thickness of the box plot doesn't ultimately matter. Those vertical lines are what do matter, and you actually pick up marks for putting in bits of those. So if you actually did put the highest and the lowest value, you'll get a mark. If you put the median in, you get a mark, and you get the third mark for putting in the upper and lower quartiles. This is a pretty straightforward question. This topic is particularly popular in the exam. Make sure you've tried this, make sure you're able to do it, make sure you're able to get full marks in it.